Welcome to episode 3 of 360 Degrees, Circus Through a Holistic Lens. I'm Stacy Clark. This series offers you insight into the 3 C's, casting, coaching, and career. Dustin Walston joined me to talk about career, and more specifically, the important human attributes that will help propel your career. Enjoy. Welcome to 360 Degrees, Circus Through a Holistic Lens. We'll be exploring the 3 C's, casting, coaching, and career. With me is Dustin Walston. Dustin is a self-described hang-gliding jester with blueprints. In everyday terms, he's an athlete, a performing artist, and let's start by you telling us where you are today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to today. Where I am today, as we all know, looking into the unknown. We don't know what's happening next, the restructuring of the entertainment world. So I'm doing the best I can to align myself in a good position to where when everything goes again, you can hit the ground running. And I feel that's all we can do at this point, knowing we don't know what's next.
Getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, the unknown.
Exactly.
Tell me about the hang gliding, blueprinting.
Okay. Yeah. So when asked to kind of describe myself in a few nouns, these are the main ones that came up with. A jester is my personality. I've learned that I'm an entertainer, a performer, but more so the morale leader. I've learned that my benefit to a team is morale maintenance, and I enjoy that role. So you have your engineers and your people that are doing that. And I really like to build esteem and confidence. And if it's getting too hectic, lighten the mood. So that's definitely a jester. As far as hang gliding, I'm a traveler. I'm a traveler in my life and through nature. And when I think of the way in which I travel, hang gliding it's soft. It's not up to me. You kind of go on the wind where the wind takes you, but you can still steer it, and it's a more softer approach. There's not a lot of forcing in hang gliding. And then with the blueprints, it's because although a jester, I do have a plan. There's a plan that it's not just whimsical, fly by the seat of my pants. I do have blueprints, so I needed to put those in there as a direction.
I love it. And it makes perfect sense. So let's start with the jester part. And I invite you to take us back, travel us back to how it all began for you. You've had a life in the performing arts. Where did it begin?
Small town. I came from my position, very, very small town. Luckily, talented athlete that outgrew the small town quite quickly and jumped headfirst into the world. I wanted to see everything, do everything, look under every rock, taste everything. And I did a lot of self-exploration of how things tick inside me and the world. I found a nice vehicle is the jester role or a clown role, or it opened a lot of doors. You know, the jester can travel through class, although he's in the noble court, he's hanging with the townspeople, he's making din left. There's a lot of freedom in that role. And it's in that freedom that I found a strength. Marrying hard work and joy is tough sometimes because you want to play. I'm a player. I love games. You can play all day long. You got to get the work done, and you also got to make the ship sail into the port. And
I love your metaphoric thinking. I'm so aligned with these visuals and these connections to other spaces that really then actually drive home to what is the core message. The work's got to get done. Let's get in there and do the work. But what is the context? Love that.
Exactly. So, and again, it has to get done anyway. And if it just can get there with a song, it's just easier. And it's not blind optimism. I know my strength now as a team member. You know, at the beginning, you don't know, and you learn over time. If you put Dustin on your team, it's just going to be a smoother ride, which is just as important as getting the job done. But if it sucks, I mean, that's no one wants to do that.
let's go back to your athletic days and tell me about getting Dustin on your team. Describe for me a situation in which you stepped into that role of jester. In what sort of context would you bring that energy to the others around you?
Sure. The best would be any kind of rehearsal or creation process where you have multinational people from different places with different intensities. You have your ex gymnasts, you have your, you have your, some nationalities can be a little bit more focused and intense. And to bring all that together is tricky, you know? And the common language I feel is is laughter and games and not taking everything too seriously. But you have to watch because those very serious people look at that as a negative. You're playing around, you're being silly, and it's a dance. It's a morale is not a static thing. It's very dynamic and it changes every day based on if your coach is being overbearing, you lighten the mood. But if everyone's doing nothing, you got to pump them up and say, okay, let's get to work. And I honestly think it's a very important role. And it's a role that all the credit goes to the person that solved the equation, that mastered the thing, you know? And the unsung hero is the people that silently made it, supported the person that, but everyone knows that the supporting roles don't get the credit and the main ones do. But the twist is being content doing that role, you know? And it's that self-awareness that I finally found that I could put into use confidently instead of being a one-off.
So you've actually just grabbed the words right out of my mouth. That does require a hearty dose of self-awareness to be able to understand where you fit into the fabric of things and what you have to offer and what your unique qualities are, that inherent set of characteristics that can be lighting up a group. Was that something that you enjoyed all along? Did it come easily to you, or are we talking about the same kind of work that you put in to be able to put that into words?
Yeah, I think it's just channeling it. I was the class clown in high school. You learn how to manage that and that it's a strength and it's but the even class clown comes from just I love people and I love connecting with people. And that's I think where comedy comes anyway, is you have to find out what they think is funny if they don't, or it's a again, it's a dance. So but beyond that, as far as self-awareness, I find that it's very important to be self-aware as you pursue anything in business, things like that. You've got to know how you're being received equally as in what you're trying to put out. I think very often your intention, if you're not observant, isn't necessarily received on the other end. And the ability to turn that lens and say, you know, am I coming across as genuine, honest, helping? Am I arrogant? Because you can be working very, very hard and it's not being received. And so you're frustrated because you got to turn that lens around.
Just running up
Otherwise,
against a wall.
and you'll find so many times that, why did that happen? Why did I not get that job? Why did that person not promote me? Why did that? And the more articulately you can view yourself, you can solve that puzzle. But if you don't know how to, you know, see who you are, you're going to come up empty-handed, I think, a lot of times.
Communication is such a refined skill, and we really use that word so liberally and we toss it around in all forms. I can remember the very best advice I received a long time ago now, and it's since woven its way into my operations as a people leader, as a person who does the things that I do in life. And that was to be able to adapt your communication style to the person with whom you're communicating. And it's exactly what you've just said. You need to have that clarity about how what it is that you're bringing to the table is actually being received. And that can mean heard. It can also speak to perceived. It's not always just a question of the words making sense. It's really so much more nuanced. So let's fast forward into a new environment. You've had this experience, you've had this role that is taking shape, something that defined you as an athlete. And now you're moving into what you would hope to be at the time, a professional career in the performing arts. What happened then?
So I knew that performing wouldn't last forever, as everyone knows, and you've got to create those seeds of opportunity forward. So when it comes time to pass, you're ready for it. And it took a lot of adaptability, took flexibility, new world, different game. The expectations of a performer versus management, completely different. And you have to, either you've been honing those skills along the way, or you have to learn quick. You're not responsible for other people. The data is different. The way in which you speak to people, usually I was speaking upwards. Now I'm speaking not downwards, but downwards in the sense of I need to be receptive of how people are receiving my message, because it's more important, because it's a chain of events. So
I'm going to interrupt you right here. I want you to clarify for the viewers what your role was, what required this skill set transition, because we've had you as athlete turned on-stage performer, and that significant career transition when one metaphorically hangs up the tights, that was your shift into more management and operations.
Mm-hmm. So I suddenly was in charge of 133 people, technicians, artists, that all needed different things. And I was the point of contact to have to sift through all of these different needs and provide info for them. I was a tour production coordinator for Lucia. And so we're in charge of the transfers in-house. I was in charge of disability, insurance, HR, and immigration. And it was exciting work for sure, but the ability to have all that information go in the right places was the biggest challenge. You have deadlines for sure, but you were also, that department was the problem solvers. You get a lot of problems in the door and you have to solve them, and that was your job. People need a lot of things on tour. They're away from home. So you have to have that emotional IQ to, I guess you don't have to. You could be one type of person and they could deal with it, but that's not my that's not my vibe.
Yeah.
So it just switched. As an artist, I wasn't entertaining them anymore. I needed to help them. They can't do much with a song and a dance. They need this info now. So
in that, I'm hearing a lot of skills and competencies that would enable you to succeed in that job. Earlier, you talked about sprinkling the seeds and starting to water and nurture the future growth. Tangibly, what kinds of things did you do to prepare yourself for the post-stage performing part of your life?
Gotcha. So even though I didn't know what it was going to be doing at the time, while I was an artist, I did, thankfully, 2 internships with 2 other shows in that future position. But let me stop back before that. I think one thing that's extremely important that worked in my benefit was you've got to be very vocal about your wants. If you don't say it, if you're not sharing this information, it's really hard for other people to connect you to that. They would not know from out of the gate that I wanted to move over into, tour management.
Why would they?
It's so you have to early on say it. You don't demand it. You say, I have an interest in this. Then you follow it up later. And then the other person realizes, I think this person is taking this seriously. Let's give him a little nugget and see what he does with it. Oh, he came back. So that is what I'm talking about. So while I was an artist, I did 2 internships, thankfully. And what that did later was when I was up for the position, it really brought me to the top of the list because I had already had hands-on experience doing that. If I had not done that and went for the job, I was told there was a huge list of people in line for that job. And I felt, oh no, Come to find out later, I really jumped up quick because of the pre-work that I did. The interview was quite important, but I had done my due diligence beforehand. And I didn't know what it was for. I did those internships not knowing what is going to become of this. So I also have to add to anyone listening, it is so important. Looking back, you don't even know what things are for at the time, but do it. Yeah, whatever it is. I mean, learn how to tie knots. If people are juggling fire, you don't have to be the next best one at it. If your friend is a DJ, just ask him, what do those knobs do? Because it's only later when it comes into play that you can raise your hand. And that is a differentiating thing that you can stand out. I've been in auditions where, like, can anyone do this thing? And I'm like, oh, thank goodness I learned how to yo-yo for 5 seconds because I got the job. Otherwise, I could have had to say no. So to putting your hand in is very important.
I'm hearing you say that you built up a toolkit as you went along, that all the way along through whatever experiences you enjoyed, the ones that you worked hard for, you collected knowledge and skills and competencies along the way, understanding that these were all ingredients, but maybe you weren't entirely sure what the recipe was, and certainly not
Exactly.
sure of what the end product was going to be in the oven. Simply that you were in a receiving place. Is that an accurate interpretation?
100%. You said it better than I could say it. You, the person who, that on your path, there's 1,000 ingredients on the trail. And it's up to you to pick them up and put it in your basket. And they're incomplete and they're small. Sometimes it's the whole ingredient. Great. But if you are observant and you listen and look, you can eventually put these little pieces together, and they come from different people. It can be a one-off comment from some rigger that said something that you need for a future thing. And it's the successful people, I do feel, that can put those things together. You know, sometimes I have a basket full of stuff, but how can I turn this into something? You know, and that's my challenge. But I absolutely, it's a life is a series of incomplete recipe ingredients. And when it comes time, hopefully you have it prepared and ready to go, because that will just maximize your opportunities for success. It doesn't ensure it, but it just maximizes it.
I think we're going to change the episode's title to cooking.
Cooking with
We'll get into this metaphoric space. Cooking with Circus. Cooking
perfect.
with Dustin. Really, really interesting. And I get the sense, even with the alignment with that persona of jester and what that suggests around energy and identity and the fitting in and the contributing to whatever environment you're in.
Mhm.
Talk to me about something along the way, because there has to have been something that might have been a barrier or something that just really did not go as you might have wished.
Sure. Give me 1 second to think of a good example.
It's a tough one sometimes, which probably signifies not such a bad thing. If you haven't had any really, really dark holes to come out of. But every performer knows, every human being knows that it is not just an upward trajectory.
Yes, and I've also thought it's how you look at an obstacle. If you look at it as a learning lesson, there are no obstacles. It's just so I I was extremely flexible, so I could dive and weave. I will say that people that are very inflexible are the ones that can break when sincere pressure is put on. And my kind of almost what they
I was
say,
going to say, this is hang gliding now. I feel like we're hang gliding.
you know, I didn't have a lot of major traumatic things. Um, what I did swim in was that doubt and worry, am I on the right track? So that's absolutely my answer. When you take an atypical route, which isn't high school, marriage, college, kids, there's not a roadmap for that. And you can feel extremely just out there in no man's land. And I lived there because when you do gig work, if you're a musician, if you're an artist, anything that's temporary, you have to be brave or just not scared of the unknown. So to answer your point, there was a point where I was Frosty the Snowman at the UFC Christmas party here in Las Vegas. I was in the costume and I was inside that costume. What am I doing? This is before Cirque. This is before I just moved to Vegas with a dream under my arm. What am I doing? You know, I graduated from college. I'm here doing this $100 gig at this. When do you give up on your dream? When are you off track? How long do you hold out? And if someone told me it's all going to work out, I will have a blast at that party. But that's where it takes to, I think, make or break again. But my story worked out, so it's okay. But I have a soft heart for everyone that is still in line in auditions in LA to be movie stars. They're still taking singing lessons to be. It's a no man's land, and so that is the part that was hard. But that is where that self-awareness was the most important for me, because if you are way off base and don't know it, you're gonna really float off. How close am I to being on the right track?
Mm.
You know, just
And so what did fuel you in those moments? Because that's a classic example. And I think we all have those sort of not so great aha moments of I may just have hit the wall. What fueled you? What brings it back? What even now in the time of COVID lets you stay grounded and lets you be the human being that you want, even in the face of adversity?
um well, I'll split it into two sections. One is when you're a novice at something, and one is when you kind of become an expert. And I feel when you're a novice, there's a strength to it. Before you know the job market and who's this and what you can do, you can kind of just try anything because you don't even know why someone would say yes or no. So this naivety can be quite strong. I just kept throwing myself out there, and I didn't have an inner voice yet that said, "You're not going to get that," or "That's too good." I didn't know anything, and I that was my strength, was not knowing. Um, but then as you do something long enough, you become more of an expert of something. And this second voice can come in saying, "No, no, you're not going to get that. You've done shows that you're not, no, no, that," and you actually can cut yourself off. So later you have to manage that second voice that's appeared out of nowhere once you knew enough to start cutting yourself, you know?
That's really interesting because I think that beautiful naivete can absolutely work in your favor. You've experienced it. But you're right that you can't stay in that space forever. And that in a way, there's that sort of, it's disproportionately working for you at the beginning. And then the levels start to change. And sure enough, you have a little bit more experience and wisdom, a few more ups and downs, a few more notches in the belt. And you can't rely on that same source. So, in that kind of space, I think the trick is, and I'm hearing you say it when you speak about self awareness, letting yourself tap into that, sort of take a drink from that well and enjoy that piece of it so as not to create barriers for yourself, so as not to let that pendulum shift so far over that you close the doors long before you get the chance to walk through them.
Right. And
Can you
I say again.
my question was going to be, can you think of an example where you had that nagging self-doubt and you walked into whatever the situation, whether it was, an actual rehearsal or the precursor to all of that, an audition opportunity or a meeting, where you really had sort of very, very high levels of doubt around your success, but then it actually surprisingly worked out in your favor?
Well, it hasn't worked out in my favor yet, but during this pandemic, I have been experiencing exactly what you said. I am, with our industry closed, as I look for jobs and things like that, I feel myself cutting all of my, that's below what I want to do. This is what I want to do. I'm just putting a wall based on my reputation or what I've done. It's like once you go up a level, you now cut anything below that.
Yeah.
And that is the stopper. So that's what I'm experiencing. It's
I
if
relate.
you know what I
I
mean?
know
And
what you're feeling.
it's a hindrance. If you were
Yeah.
the CEO of a company, you're never going to work the front line again unless you're humble. Unless you have to be humble. It's switching different ways to look at things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Period. And that's the downside of a upward trajectory is But I must tell anyone, if you're new and you're listening to this, most people know this. On your way up, be kind, because on the way down, you're going to meet those same people again. But the situation, the circumstances are going to be different. That's the number one thing everyone knows. But be nice on your way to the top, because you don't want to be on the bad side when you're in the pocket. So you can write that down and put in your pocket.
Yeah, I love it. And of course, so much easier to say in retrospect, or perhaps say because you've been stung and you recognize in your own behavior that you might have wished you'd done something differently along the way. What I love about that type of statement, as much as it's, it's quite recognizable, it's almost a cliche, and yet born of truth. And if only we could actually be just that pretty awesome person to the best of our ability all the time. Because we have landed in a curious space where all of a sudden, with our industry in tatters, there's really not a lot of space on the landing. We're all sort of huddling, waiting for whatever that next best thing is. And we need to actually make each other stronger by coming together and by hanging in there together. And the last thing we need right now is a sort of cat fight or people scratching at each other to try to claw their way ahead. Again, it's that space of, I think, settling into a comfort of who you are, understanding who you are and what your own personal collection of coping mechanisms are that allow you to be so much more positive front facing. And that's actually one of the reasons I was so excited to have you on here to chat, is just understanding that there is a person, a human, a meaningful contributor. Jester likeness aside, I mean, I think that's a spirit. But I'll circle it back actually to the very beginning comment when you talk about the softness of hang gliding. And you could arguably have come in saying like, I'm a bulldozer or I'm a locomotive train and this is how I get stuff done in this industry. It doesn't have to be that way. I think it's so interesting to take a look at this bird's eye view that one can benefit from as you glide through the air, suitcase strapped onto your back, really zooming out, really having that perspective, a much broader perspective about how you can be, how you can make things better, how you can contribute. And that's just an energy, I think, that you hold very naturally, that I've always known of you. And then tangibly through your career, really exciting to see that you've had opportunity to fire it up, to actually put it to use.
Mm-hmm. And thank you. And it's been a ride. And I want to tell anyone that's listening, remember when I started this, I didn't know anything. I had no connections. I just wanted this thing that was so far away, and it was baby steps at first. So if you're in that mode where you're like, I don't even know how to connect the dots, if you want to be a stuntman in Hollywood and you don't even know a person, you just take it one person at a time, and you just like a plane or something, it just roots off and it roots off and it roots off. And if you're flexible and optimistic, and because not every goal is a straight line, I'm case in point of that. Sometimes the way to your goal is not through the front door. There's 18 people at that door and they're all knocking, but the side window is open, or the back door, or the chimney. You just have to be, and some people, it works going through the front door. I know people that's their method and it works for them, because in a front door situation, they are the strongest. So you know what I mean? If that's your modus operandi, go for it. So just, it's not always so streamlined, A to B, and it can be a path.
You know that wellness is a really important part of my life, and one of my practices is mindfulness. And what really strikes me in what you're saying is that reminder that arguably it's actually not about the goal. Can it become more about the actual learning and enjoyment and enrichment of the journey that is taking you toward that goal?
Hmm.
I love a goal like anyone else. I would have aspirations. I have aspirations for what's coming next. But I love to think that we can recalibrate a little bit and step away from those metrics that are just about the outcome and really actually step into that indeed more holistic view of what about all the gains along the way? Just really enjoying what we can become on the path toward that goal.
1,000%. I said before, on even if you don't get your dream, the path towards you trying is so much richer than a path of doing something you don't want to do.
Mm.
Even if you don't get the dream, it's you taking control of your own life. And there's lots of joys and people when you're aligned. I've found. So I hope that gives someone hope that even in the pursuit, the path of who you can become and the people you meet in its shape is just more in tune with what's right for you and who you are.
I
Have you
used to
experienced that
get,
yourself?
I just interrupted you. Go ahead.
Have you experienced that yourself?
I absolutely have. I absolutely have. And I think it's the self work that lets you recognize it, acknowledge it, let it lie, and then transfer that or reframe that into, okay, tangibly, what is the work now that I need to do? Because it's all fine to sort of get in your head and swirl it around and have all these notions about what it means. We know, as you described right out of the gate, then there's the work that needs to be done. You have to attach that piece of you, that work ethic and that drive to really locomote and move you forward. I think what I've learned a great deal in my mindfulness practice is, trust me, I'm not there yet. I'm not comfortable yet in all of this discomfort and in all of this unknowing, but I'm starting to give it its space. I can't change it. I need to just let this moment be this moment, and now this moment, and so
Hmm.
on. It's just that sort of stopping and pulling back just a shade to be able to have a broader view.
1,000%. I agree completely. I've often used a microscope as an analogy for sometimes it's important to zoom in. It's
Mm-hmm.
everything is very important. It's detail oriented, but it can be overwhelming. And sometimes you need to zoom out to just get a bigger, more easily. I mean, think of the globe. Think of Earth. There it is, nice and pretty. There's all the parts. Zoom into New York City and it's chaotic mess, but you need both. And as you balance your self-awareness and doing anything, a project, if you will zoom in and out at your needs, you can digest it more easily. Some people stay zoomed in so hard that everything's important, everything's a big deal. I've got to, it's now. We're also just, we're in a pandemic. Hopefully 8 years from now, looking back, you're going to see a much more condensed version in your memories. You just, how you make it palatable so it's not so overwhelming. And acceptance. I think acceptance is one of the key ingredients to getting through life without as much heartache or hurt or frustration. Accepting doesn't mean accept anything that comes to you, but it means you can't change. Not everything is in your control. you
Mm.
know things, you gotta accept certain things, or how people are. I have to accept you, and if I try to want Stacy to be what I want her to be, if she's not, every time she's not, I have to deal with that disappointment you
What's
know
interesting about acceptance is that I think sometimes it's misunderstood for almost a lackadaisical approach, like the laissez faire, let it go. It means that you can just, it's like a cop out almost. It's this sense of, well, it just is what it is, and so that's a giant old excuse for me to recoil or to not actually dig my heels in and seek what I want.
hmm
With that in mind, what do you want? What are you aspiring to right now? You've retired from performing on stage. You've had now some experience in these last years building up more in the administrative management operations side of life.
hmm
If I said to you, describe for me your dream job, and we're going to allow for the fact that COVID will hopefully one day just let us get on with life. What does that dream job look like?
I'll tell you. So I'm 38, so everybody knows. I'm going to use the process of zooming in and zooming out as an example to answer this question. When I zoom in hard, I want to have enough money. I want to be with my partner. I want a job where I'm respected and I'm using my brain, but I'm still physical, things like that. As I zoom out, I just want to continue to be happy. I want to help people. I want to travel. I want to do the things because I want to work and I don't mind frustrating job if the bigger payment is well-being. So that's what would guide the. It's almost like I'll use the zoom out to get me close and then zoom in from there.
Yeah.
So first answer the big questions. You've seen that analogy where they have a jar and they have sand, golf balls, and rocks, and if you put it in the wrong order, it doesn't all fit. If you go sand and then it fits. Same thing. So love traveling. uh, I want a job that pushes me. I know I'm a flexible person, that you could plop me in Moldova and I'll just kind of, it might not be my dream place, but I'll figure it out. So these are the things I embrace, you know. I love working at the international level. This is where I'm going to throw all my interest in. I will also say, I've always been a student, and at this age I'm having to turn into a teacher. I was a really good student, and some people are natural teachers. I'm having to, now I've amassed all this knowledge and I'm having to learn how to be a good teacher, because you can't be a teacher. I mean, you can't be a student until you're like 80 and die. You never really gave back. Otherwise you're just kind of like. So in my 40s, as I get to my 40s, I want to give back in ways that matter. I want to, because I'm extremely thankful of all I've been given. A lot of help, and I couldn't always give it back to the same person that gave it, but I can absolutely give backwards behind me. So when you ask, where do I see myself? That's the big picture answer. Specifically, I want to work with the artist again. I want to get back directly as an artist to artist. Wider was good too, but I just get so much joy from seeing them succeed at this point, knowing what they're going through. And maybe it's a reflection of me seeing myself in them, but it's easy to give to anything. They could anything in the world they want. You got it. What do you want? You want to rob a bank? You got it. So if I could get a little closer to the artist again, running a I'm making this up, but being a coach again, working in casting, working with a traveling show in Europe, that I'm taking care of them. Because after this past job, I never had to take care of anyone. I just took care of myself. The last job of tour production is how to take care of others, so that skill set is more in the air for me right now.
The beautiful thing about teaching, and here I'll use the zoom out concept on teaching. It doesn't mean that you, by title, necessarily have to be a teacher, but in teaching, you continue to be a student. You continue to learn. There's this sense, I think, of what I'm hearing you say is in the giving back. It's full cycle.
Right.
There's so much to gain and to learn by sharing and by giving and by teaching. So it'll be very interesting to see how all of this mapping that you've created for yourself, what that ends up looking like. And we are in this moment of connecting with one another via a screen, still in that space of the unknown, really not quite knowing exactly what shape it will take.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe through one lens that has a glimmer of excitement. I think there's also a certain lens where we're all a little fatigued and ready for some action and wanting it to take on its real shape. But I think that if we can harness it a little bit, like you spoke of earlier, the energy of being a little bit naive, if we can actually harness that energy and gain and hang on to that excitement of what it still could all be, I think that will be a really, really terrific path to walk.
Because they say do things like you're doing it for both the first time and the last time at the same time. Yeah. It's quite a wide emotion, because I think people understand that when they hear that same thing.
Love it. Let's get into your takeaways.
Okay.
We've touched on a lot of important values and principles that have been meaningful for you and very much applicable to you throughout your career. I invite you to share with our viewers your 3 takeaways.
Okay. So I want to put focus on 3 things, and one was the concept of self-awareness. It's my number one as far as helping you navigate not just life, but a professional life, circus world. And it takes a second. All the work I feel is at the beginning, because at first it's very foreign. It's like working out. All the workout is the beginning, and then it's just maintenance after. You got to listen to how people talk to you, even if they're in a bad mood. What did they just say? Why did they say that? Where are they coming from? What does that mean? Is there something in there that I can use to see how I will go back and watch this, and because I know how I felt doing it, but what did I come across as I wanted to? And if you can shrink that gap, you can navigate the circumstances that happened to you. I know why I didn't get that job. They were looking for this and I was giving this, and it does not mean don't be yourself. It's not about changing yourself or what they think. It's just a reference point, So if you see a penguin acting like a dolphin, you're gonna fill the gap. You're gonna see and the closer you can get. So, and research it, look at it. What does it even mean? What is self-awareness? And there's different levels of growth. So if you can reach the point to where you can be in someone else's shoes and look back at yourself and correctly see them as others see you, that's the goal. So second would be flexibility. And this is just my story. Some people maybe are not as flexible as me, but flexibility has been a true strength because it's coupled with freedom. Through that flexibility, I've had so much freedom of choice and how I react to a situation and the kinds of people you meet. So it's like self-awareness was helpful, but the flexibility made it all possible, where I didn't get too tired or too broke. I could continue the journey from being flexible. I didn't have as many. You asked what a big obstacle was, but I didn't. This is flexible. You just went around them. You just jumped over them. You just, and then maximizing your opportunities, planting the seeds of opportunity before you get to them has made my ride smoother. There wasn't those huge stop gaps. Those stop gaps can be hard. You lose your momentum, you feel lost. But as soon as you enter that next section, those seeds are already starting to bloom. You can just keep going. It's smoother. It's a happier ride. So definitely don't just look down at your feet in your decision making, because you're gonna get all these. And it's a skill you have to, because different seeds have different amounts of time before they start to sprout. So some you got to throw way far, some kind of short, but as long as you're conscious of that you need to do that, you'll get better at it. And once you see it working, like, oh, I get it. I get what he's talking about, stick that hand out, meet that person, be vocal, tell that person, one day I'd like to do that. Can I watch you do that sometime? And the second follow-up is be consistent, because I think in your case, Stacy, I'm sure so many people have contacted you once and said, I'd like to blah, blah, blah. And you never hear from them again, But if someone consistently, not too many times, not overbearing, you begin to, okay, this person's serious. This is what this person wants. And it's more easy for you to be like, I know a person that could do that, And then you got to have the skills to back it up. You're just maximizing opportunity. You're not ensuring it, because once the door opens, you got to be able to deliver. So those are the 3 takeaways I have for you guys. I want to let you know if anytime my contact information will be here with Stacy, you can contact me. I would love to help anyone, especially in the beginning that it's confusing or they just want to help figure it out, because I was that person 100%. And I want to keep the light backwards as you all pursue your dreams. And I'm thankful so much for this day, Stacy.
Well, I
CircusTalk has been really
appreciate
helpful.
you. And on behalf of those who might, in fact, take you up on that offer, I thank you for that generosity as well. I have a really strong feeling about mentorship and career guidance and career advising in transition. And as I spoke to earlier, and as we've touched on a couple times, I think at the essence, we're talking about how to be a good human being. By being in a position to share your experience and share your knowledge and wisdom, because it's a bit of a stepping ladder, isn't it? Getting up from knowledge into the wisdom category. I think that's a really generous offer. And I encourage people, this is what we teach. It's what I teach to the pre-professional students in my life. You need to surround yourself and educate yourself. Use the knowledge that's out there. Use the opportunities that are presented. Take advantage of it. And I love that takeaway. It's an optimization. It's really just not letting things pass you by, but stepping into them with integrity, and then start to make yourself part of what will become that full cycle.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Perfectly said. You don't need to interview me. You could just talk to the camera.
I appreciate you. I will add a quick personal story just on the luxury that I've had in being able to observe you in your career. And it's something that, working in the world of casting, we are in contact with a lot of people, of course, a lot of amazing talent. And to do this job well, you have to believe in the talent and you have to absolutely want for them to succeed. One of the biggest joys that I've always had, and I can speak to my colleagues in casting as well, my peers, it's really being able to step back and say, look at what this person has done. I remember seeing that first demo they submitted, or that first occasion in audition, or I heard about them or saw them on stage somewhere and had a first glimpse of them early in their career. It's a real treat to be able to then fast forward a whole bunch of years and watch all of these significant life milestones happen, and then for it to net out in a place where we get to chat about it and hopefully share and inform and inspire the next generation. Again, it's all about this life cycle. So thank you for being a part of that.
Well, thank you. And thank you to CircusTalk. I feel like it's been such a good thing during this break to continue to inspire. The podcast, the thing, it's a wonderful thing for this time period. So great work to them as well.
Awesome. My thanks to you, Dustin. And that is a wrap on our 360-degree holistic look at circus.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for tuning in. In the next episode of 360 Degrees, Circus Through a Holistic Lens, I'm joined by Adrian Porter, Head of Higher Education Delivery at the National Centre for Circus Arts in London. Adrian is a self-described aspiring experiential maven with an insatiable curiosity, and despite 2.5 decades of experience, as a teacher, he considers himself a novice. We explore what that means in episode 4.